Abraham Krasnoff Courage and Commitment Award to Dr. Ruth Simmons, President of Brown University. Dr. Simmons previously served as president of Smith College and also has held academic positions at the University of Southern California, Princeton, Spelman, Radcliffe, University of New Orleans, and California State at Northbridge. Dr. Simmons has been a phenomenal fundraiser. I suggest, Elaine, that we invite her to join our board. A biography of Dr. Simmons, which hardly touches on all of her accomplishments, appears in your program. At last count, Dr. Simmons was the recipient of 29 honorary degrees. She received the Drum Major for Justice Award from the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, was named by Time magazine as the best college president, was chosen by U.S. News and World Report as one of the top leaders in America, and was chosen twice by Glamour magazine as a Woman of the Year. In an essay entitled My Mother's Daughter, Lessons I Learned in Civility and Authenticity, Dr. Simmons explained, I was intent on doing something productive and on being everything my parents taught me to be. Their values were clear. Do good work, don't ever get too big for your britches, always be an authentic person, don't worry too much about being famous and rich because that doesn't amount to too much. This is a better world because Dr. Simmons followed her parents' advice. Dr. Simmons' life and career has amounted to very much. She has been extremely productive and has done good work. She has led a life that her parents would have made her parents proud. We are honored that she is with us this evening, and I am privileged to present to her the Abraham Krasnoff Justice and Commitment Award. Dr. Simmons.
I especially want to note, and forgive me for getting into your business here, but you know, traditionally, your 10th year, after 10 years, you should get something really big for that, don't you think?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know where your board of directors is are seated, but just so you know, at the end of our 10 years, something big is supposed to come my way. It's the end of my 10th year too, so that's why. I also want to recognize the important work that is done every day for Long Island and the rest of the country by this organization. It's truly, truly inspiring. In the past 10 years, the work of this organization has strengthened civil rights laws with regard to housing. It's forthrightly engaged the public in changing perceptions of race and racism, and that is extraordinary. Because of course you know you're working against the tide, don't you? The events in this country in the last several years have been breathtaking in the respect that they cause us to question at a profound level whether or not we can ever get to that point where we see racism eradicated in this country. And you know, I know that my public relations people always tell me not to go off script, but let me just say this. When you just take a moment to think about the kind of discourse we've been subjected to over these years, the permission that has been given for people to say whatever they want, and to create divisions in this country. It's extraordinary to me. We have a sitting president against whom perfectly prominent people have raised questions about his legitimacy as a U.S. citizen without the public rising up against that. Imagine that. And I'm convinced divide us in this way. And so I'm so proud of this organization for doing what it is doing. You've informed public policy. You've built a vibrant community committed to using education, research, and advocacy to, yes, to use this word even, is just so extraordinary to me, to eradicate racism. All of these accomplishments could not have happened without, of course, the leadership of President and co-founder Elaine Gross and co-chairs Scott Williams and Howard Glickstein. And I just want to say to all of you how much I admire your work and thank you for everything that you've done. Of course, I want especially to acknowledge Professor Glickstein. I have to say that to be recognized alongside you is a special honor for me because of your role in drafting the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 were critical in combating bias, discrimination, and racism in this country. And especially meaningful to me because, of course, that was the moment that I was coming of age. I grew up in the South, persuaded by everything around me that I would never be anything. All of the rhetoric said that, all of the officials said that, and I grew up understanding that I would forever be barred from being an equal citizen in this country. And yet, something magical happened in the 60s. And somehow, this country changed directions. So we owe you immensely, immensely. And I can't say that. I just want to say that it's wonderful to see so many familiar faces here tonight. I want to acknowledge the Smith women who are in the house. You know, Smith women are really, if you don't know this, let me tell you, if you ever want anything to happen with certainty, get a Smith woman to do it. And so I spent wonderful years in Smith. I'm always delighted to see Smith alums. Thank you for being here tonight. I want to thank this organization for reinforcing the argument that housing and civil rights advocates have been pressing for years, specifically that discrimination against minority home seekers is an important dimension and cause of segregation. While the Civil Rights Act made discrimination illegal, passing legislation was, of course, just the beginning of the struggle for equal opportunity, treatment, and access. In the past 10 years, numerous politicians, including President Bush and President Obama, have declared that inequality in education is the civil rights issue of our generation. Unequal treatment in many areas can be overcome, but inequities in education can have lifetime ramifications. Our vastly disparate educational outcomes across the racial divide portends differential life outcomes for our children, making this one of the most significant impediments to a level playing field for children. You know, I was in India last year at precisely the moment that the Indian Parliament decided to make education an entitlement for every single child in India. What a moment that was. I had an opportunity to go to the ashram of Mahatma Gandhi. And it was very moving, of course, to be in that space anyway. But then the director of the museum told me that Martin Luther King had visited this space at a critical point for him, and he'd become overwhelmed to be there. And he asked if they would permit him to stay overnight in the ashram, which of course would be closed. And so they prepared a pallet on the floor for him. And they went home and left him there, and he slept there on the floor that night. It's a powerful thing to be in a country when change is afoot. India is such a country today, in very much the way that we were changing legislation in the 60s. They are struggling now to do the same thing. So our struggle for justice has to be wider than the space between our two oceans. It has to embrace the world, because there are children who have needs everywhere. And if we can be an inspiration for them, as they have been for us, that's something I think we certainly ought to embrace. I have to say that we have faced some difficulties in this country in attaining that level playing field. For every decade we fail to address disparities, other countries will further surpass the United States in high school completion, college attainment, and other educational measures. And in doing so, their productivity will also surpass the United States in an intensely competitive global economy. The manifest importance of this issue prompted President Obama to state a new American educational goal. By 2020, he said, America will once again have the highest proportion of college graduates in the world. I hope this is true. I fear it may not be. We certainly have to do more than merely wish that this could be the case. Thousands of people in this country are diligently working on education challenges, and that's a good thing. And yet, somehow, it simply isn't enough. I'm persuaded by the assertion that what is missing is a widespread, inclusive movement to eliminate disparities in education in the same way that civil rights was a broad social and political movement. The work on education has been focused thus far on practices, on principles, on individual programs, on reform, and while this continues to be important work, a larger social and political force may be required to bring about the structural and systemic change needed. Education is the critical component to eradicating racism and ending discrimination, and yet educational structures are contributing to the very racism and discrimination education seeks to end. A March 2011 study of Southern California schools by the Civil Rights Project at UCLA found that California students were extremely segregated by race, and the poverty and language layers add even more inequities to the system. The researchers found that when a middle or high school was 80% underrepresented minority, virtually all the students were low income. The average English language learner student attended schools that were 73% Latino. Related to the segregation was teacher placement. They found that in 2008, students in segregated schools were 3 times more likely to have a teacher lacking full qualifications. 3 times. 3 times. Segregated schools provide fewer advanced placement courses, fewer college prep teachers, and most often, less rigorous mathematics curriculum. And those of you who understand what's happening technologically in our society understand that for many of the fields that our students want to go into, that school has to have mathematics of a certain level, otherwise condemns students when they go to college never to be able to concentrate in a wide array of fields. That's how important it is. These kinds of aspects have direct impact on educational outcomes. In an intensely segregated school, at best, 50 of 100 ninth graders will finish high school, half. Of those 50 who graduate, only 11 will enroll, and this is enroll, not complete, in some post-secondary education. These shocking data are every bit as chilling as the disparities that I alluded to when I started, the kind of disparities that were common when I was a child. The research conducted by Professor John Logan, the UCLA study, and Erase Racism's own Tale of Two Schools are the kinds of work desperately needed right now to spur large-scale public involvement. Without understanding how systems and structures reinforce racism, discrimination, and inequity, we will never be able to overcome these practices. So I congratulate Erase Racism again for the work that it does, and I trust that the next 10 years will be filled with even more groundbreaking research to fulfill your mission and serve our country. 2 weeks ago, I had a wonderful opportunity. I got a call and learned that my high school teacher from inner city Houston was having an 80th birthday party. I should say parenthetically, and I'm almost done, that once when I was the same teacher came to visit me. And I was someplace else on campus. And this was maybe 20 years ago. And the staff members came running in search of me because they said, hurry, hurry, your high school teacher is here. And so I said, well, okay, make sure that she's comfortable and I'll be there. She said, no, come right away. And I finally discovered that what they were concerned about is that if she was my high school teacher, she must be at least 90 years old. But in any case, she wasn't at that point. She just celebrated her 80th birthday, and I wanted to be there. I wanted to be there. So I went to Washington for that birthday party because it was she who inspired me to go to college. Actually, she did more than inspire me to go to college. She found a way for me to attend. I can say that, but for her intervention, I frankly would never have gone to college. But for the help I received in schools in inner city Houston, I could not be here today. And so I know firsthand how vital the quality of schools and teachers is for young people. And often the way that I think about it, I say this to my students, sometimes the only difference for a child without economic means, the only difference that can be made in that child's life is sometimes getting to a school and finding somebody there who embraces them, who inspires them, who gives them hope, and who says simply, you can do it. And that happened to me as a child. While the social, economic, and pre-civil rights conditions in which I grew up suggested limited options for me, education did a lot of blocking and tackling that made all the difference in the life I could have. Earlier today, I started my day today meeting with the Ivy presidents of all of the Ivy League universities. We meet twice a year, and we just had our meeting today. And thinking about coming here tonight and thinking about the experiences that I've been through, looking around that table and seeing the other presidents and being in that room and knowing that for all of those young people out there who have a spark of genius, that the opportunity is there for them to do exactly what I did. They could be leading an Ivy League university. They could be leading our country. They could be helping people all over the world. But for the opportunity to be in a school where they can have their needs met. So this means so much to me to say this to you. I think this is the kind of protection that every child needs. I was saying that about blocking and tackling, and I'm very leery of using sports analogies because I often do it wrong. I hope I did that okay. With blocking and tackling, that's okay. But this is the protection every child needs. Again, I thank you so much for this honor. It is a pleasure to be with you. Thank you so much for the work.